Alright, so this podcast has to do with kind of an introduction to the periodic table. We're going to learn where metals and nonmetals are. We're going to learn kind of some names of some groups. The very first couple of days I had you sit in your groups, if you remember that. There's some names of groups, we're going to learn those. We're going to learn the charges that atoms get whenever they become ions, and certain atoms always have the same charge, and I think that's really where we're going. So kind of down here at the very bottom, hopefully you have this page in front of you. I would have given it to you in class. But here's really what we're doing. First thing we're going to do is color in the areas with different colors. So I'm going to color in metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. So I'm just going to highlight this. And up here, this very top one, number 1, is a nonmetal. Okay, so I'm going to do my nonmetals in yellow. I'm going to come down here and kind of make a little key. So nonmetals are going to be yellow. So that's a nonmetal. And then pretty much over here on the right-hand side, just about everything is a nonmetal. So this entire column, over here, not quite everything, but we get all these. Down here, starting here, metals. Here's nonmetals. Nonmetals. Alright. Kind of do this bottom down here. Alright. So that is nonmetals. We're also going to do metalloids. And let's do metalloids in blue. And we're going to leave our metals just white. Alright? So, metalloid. We have metalloid here and right below. We got a metalloid, metalloid. Metalloid, metalloid, and metalloid. Alright, so it's pretty much this line, kind of right here along the dash, this little staircase, alright, are metals, and it's kind of the line that separates metals from nonmetals. And metalloids simply are kind of semi-metals. So in some instances they act like metals, in other instances they act like nonmetals. If you have your periodic table in front of you, you're going to find that right under here, I'm just going to write it, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. This little box is aluminum. So if you think of aluminum, Al, it definitely looks like a metal. It's metallic looking, it's shiny, so it's a metal. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is, I'm going to do this in blue, but we're going to write the names of number 2 down here, write the symbols of the diatomic elements. When these elements are by themselves, not in a compound, they are bonded to another like themselves. Alright, so it's going to be this one. So hydrogen, whenever we talk about hydrogen, it's always H2, hydrogen gas. Alright, so if we talk about nitrogen gas, it is always N2, and oxygen is always O2, and fluorine gas is always F2. And then when we go down, chlorine gas is Cl2, and bromine is typically a liquid, it's Br2, and finally iodine, when it's a solid, is I2. But these 7 elements, when they're by themselves, okay, just the way they connect is they pair up with themselves. So hydrogen by itself is really H2, oxygen when it's by itself is O2, and so on and so forth. Next thing, as we look at the bottom, is write the names of the following families in their respective columns. So the first one is simply alkaline metals, and alkaline metals are this first column, so I'm just going to kind of write up and down. So this is alkali metals, this first group, or it's really called group number 1. The next one I want us to know is alkaline earth metals, and it's going to be group number 2. It's just alkaline earth. And a lot of metals in the Earth's crust come from this column number 2. There's a bunch of magnesium, there's a bunch of calcium, but a lot of these are in the Earth's crust. They're what's called alkaline earth. The next one we know is the chalcogens, and the chalcogens is just the word for the oxygen column. I'm going to write chalcogen down here. And then the next one I want you to know is the halogens, and chalcogens are right next to halogens. Because we've kind of written all over that one, we're just going to write halogens here at the very bottom. And then lastly, I want you to know the noble gases. And the noble gases are column 18. noble gases. Alright. And then the last thing we're going to do is, it says write the charge of the ions, and these elements either gain or lose electrons, which is more information than you need to know right now, for the above families, and for silver, zinc, and aluminum. So, there are certain ones I want you to know. Anytime this column 1, the metals are ions, okay? So notice hydrogen is a nonmetal. So when the metals are ions, they always have a +1. And oftentimes hydrogen will as well, but sometimes it can be a -1. But the metals always +1, and usually hydrogen. When the alkaline earth metals are ions, they always have a +2 charge. Okay? As we go to the halogens, we're just going to go to this far end, they are always neutral, so they don't have a charge. Our halogens are always a -1, and our chalcogens are always a -2. And you might typically say our nonmetals here, nitrogen and phosphorus, are typically -3. Okay? And then finally, there are 3 that I want you to know. And I want you to know silver, zinc, and aluminum, and they are right here. Silver, zinc, and we've already written aluminum. Write it again, aluminum. Alright, so for these 3, I want you to know that silver is a 1, and zinc is a 2, and aluminum is a 3. Alright, and if you're in class, if you're reviewing this, or possibly watching it for the first time, if you put your finger right on silver, what we're going to do is we're going to go a bing, bing, bing. And we're going to jump from silver to zinc to aluminum. So a bing, 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 a 1, 2, 3, silver, zinc, aluminum, and then jazz hands, yeah! And that will keep that in your mind embedded there forever. What we're going to find is that the rest of these metals in the middle, alright, so I'm just going to circle them, all the rest of them have more than one charge. So iron can either be a 2 or a 3, and nickel can either be a 1 or a 2, and chromium can be a 2 or a 3, and some of them can be 5s or 3s. But silver is always 1, zinc is always 2, aluminum is always 3, but the rest of the ones in the middle that we haven't labeled as +1 or +2 can be multiple charges. Alright, and that becomes important when we start naming. So that's your introduction to the periodic table. It should be colored kind of like that. You might color your metals, but I would just leave them blank because there's more to color.